now 7 o'clock, and so we will call this virtual meeting of the Board of Health to order by a roll call vote.
Daryl Beardsley present.
Matt Beavers present.
Lisa Camp present.
Matt Vitale present. And I've got two pieces to add as topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance. We've got lot 1A at 0 Bogastow Brook Road, Richard Harrison, new septic, new well, and 132 Nason Hill Road with Civilized Solutions. Do I have a motion to approve those additions?
So moved.
Second.
Hearing no further discussion.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Oh, Matt Vitale, aye. Perfect. And then I think I saw Jamal here for the 58 Oldfield Drive, and I thought it might make sense to try to pull that one in as the agent's business, if that works for you, Mark, and we'll try to tackle the two other plans when we're adjacent to one of their engineers. Does that sound okay?
I don't know if you can hear me, but yes, that's okay.
Perfect. And then Matt, I think my recollection from the minutes is I think you had some of the discussion. So I can pull up the 58 Oldfield plans if you want to just refresh the memory, because I at least I wasn't here on the 4th.
Yeah, sure. That sounds fine. I'm having some connectivity issues, so hopefully I stay with you. I think there are a couple of things to address here, just to sort of briefly recap from last time and try to be efficient about this. Ultimately, it was a room count issue. And I think that the sort of three big things we need to address are re-verifying the existing first floor plan, which I think we didn't have in front of us last time, but we viewed on the screen, so that should be straightforward. Reviewing the new proposed second floor, because I think that was the most of the discussion was around sort of changing a doorway to see if we have a room that looks more like a suite now. And then finally, understanding what we need in the way of deed recordings in the basement, and sort of looking through the photo to see what's finished space. So my recollection is that in previous meetings we had on the first floor identified 5 rooms, and my understanding is that none of this is changing with the renovation. And so this looks to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 still here. I count living, office, dining, kitchen, family room. So
Yeah.
5 rooms on the first floor. Is that agreeable?
That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay. So it might be most useful then to go to the new plans for the second floor.
And then Jamal, I think I see two, let's see. Which one do I want? Do I want the
They
proposed
should be dated, the ones dated received January 6th or something like that.
January 4?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Perfect, okay. And I just need to go to the second floor. Do I,
That's the demo plan. If you go down further, it'll be the new plan.
perfect.
And so the question here last time was sort of that what's labeled as new bedroom and new storage closet. Previously had been separated by a doorway and now are sort of a contiguous space. And so I think the question room as a suite, which is I think consistent with what we've done in the past. And if we do that, then we count, at least I count, starting from sort of, the bottom there, existing bedroom, and then moving clockwise, 1, 2, 3, 4, counting that as one room. And then in the new living space, 5, 6, counting it as living and kitchen.
Okay,
And so that would bring us to 11 with, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms. Is that
5 bedrooms.
5 bedrooms? Yeah, for some reason I
Because
thought
we
5,
count
but
the new living room.
as a potential bedroom,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And they had
we're at 11
existing-
total and 5 bedrooms.
and that seems consistent with what they had previously. And it's just to confirm, it's a 5-bedroom system?
That's my
Yep.
understanding.
That is correct. And we did resolve the room that's the kitchen is like a utility type room, that it would be considered like a bathroom.
Okay, perfect. And so it sounds like, Matt, at least for your gut check, this satisfies the criteria. For others who are involved in that previous discussion on the 4th, does this kind of align with your expectations?
If I can just add too, I think we're counting the kitchen as a room, but not as a bedroom. So we're
Yes.
basically swaying from not, but we're basically taking the definition that we have for any room over the first floor, except for like bathrooms, and now we're kind of including, which will set a precedent, but that's fine. We're including kitchens.
Yeah, I think it makes sense because I feel like every time there's a kitchen, I'm happy to not call it a bedroom.
Yeah.
And I agree, it makes sense.
And then for the deed recording in the basement, do we need to look at that, or that is
I
just
think it
something
would-
that we need to provide to Jamal and the applicant?
I think there was a question as to which rooms were finished or not, and so it may be helpful to look at the prior document you had, which had the basement floor plan. That one, yep, and then the photos.
And
Right, because I
Jamal, is it-
couldn't be sure what picture matched up with what space.
Exactly. So I
and
think,
Jamal, the May 18th, 2022, is that the right floor plan for us to look at for the basement?
Yep.
Perfect, okay.
The
so-
basement hasn't changed. The basement hasn't changed since we took over the project, so it's been the same thing.
Perfect, and so this is the section.
Playroom.
Room. Perfect, okay. And so we just need to describe, it looks like playroom needs to be deed recording. And is storage finished or unfinished?
that was the question.
It's yep.
There's
So
some other
I-
pictures, if we could look at those.
there are
I
some
just
other
wanted to look
pictures.
at this so I understand what the rooms
There we
are
go.
and then what we're seeing pictures of.
So that picture that you just passed in the laundry room, that's one room that's interconnected. The one
So
that's
this
next
is
after this.
This is playroom. What we're seeing here correlates to, hold on. Correlates to this one, that bottom.
Correct.
one?
Yes,
Okay. And then laundry is a
That's
sort
the
of
laundry-
utility.
The laundry and the utility are interconnected. That door that you see leads into the laundry room, or a utility HVAC closet, but those are interconnected. And then this is the unfinished storage area.
Okay.
It's a utility and laundry room. That's a finished room though, right? Is it-
Yeah, it's one large room with a door in between. You can only
well,
get to that.
then
back
it's
room
two
from the side.
rooms, so, but we don't count the laundry as a room, in the room count, just so you know.
Yeah.
But, so is that then the room called, the one that looks finished, is that what's called storage bonus room in prior
correct.
iterations?
I
That
would
is
favor-
correct.
I would favor deed recording that just because it's finished space, and I think that's most consistent with what we've done. But I'd be comfortable doing so because it's a basement room. Recognizing, I know Rebecca shared her feedback before that it's not a strategy she's generally enthusiastic about, but I think it's certainly consistent with what we've done. But as it's finished space, I do feel like we need to deed record it. Does anybody have
is-
a different opinion on the board?
Yeah, I think that's fine, Matt. Is there a window? Is there a window in that room? The utility room?
There's an awning window, which is really small.
Okay.
That's
and-
here on that left side.
Yeah, it's one of those basement style windows. So it can't be an egress window.
Like a half subgrade, half, yeah, I got it.
And what's called unfinished basement, is that what had,
That's the last picture on the. Yep,
That's full, that's real. I mean, I feel good that that's totally unfinished. That looks unfinished.
that is. It is
Um,
fully unfinished.
So
So
I
the
feel like,
question really is about the thing labeled storage room on the plan,
yeah,
which
so it sounds
that's
like
what I'm
we
looking
should-
at right now. This is the storage room.
Yes,
but
I
that,
feel like that needs to be deed recorded. Does anybody disagree?
no.
Yeah, it's reasonable.
Yep.
And just so you know, I don't believe we've ever deed recorded more than 2 rooms in a basement. So just for future reference, so that unfinished portion should stay unfinished.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So what do we need to vote on? I'm sorry, we wanted to take a look at it and now we're voting to approve the modified plan from January 4th?
Yeah.
That is correct. And I can't remember when the Title V inspection was done, because this is quite a bit of work to the house. It's more than, I believe, 50%. Jamal, do you know offhand their Title V inspection, what the date was on that?
Mark, honestly, I do not remember off the top of my head.
I would also include that, we want to make sure the system's in good working order, and that we receive a Title V inspection prior to the building application being approved, as well as the deed recording being requested.
It
So Mark,
was
are you asking for
completed.
a new Title V inspection, or you're just asking that we just?
Well,
vote?
if the Title V, we've been dealing with this for more than 2 years, I believe, and if the Title V inspection has expired, I would ask that it be up to date, so it's valid. It's valid for 2 years, unless they pump it every year, and then it's valid for 3 years.
And so we want a current Title V, and if that has elapsed since previous, then we would need an updated one. Do I have that right?
That is correct.
And Jamal, any concerns from that on your end?
I'm gonna have to get some feedback from the line. If Brett, are you on, or Dhruv, either one? Or not on. So what you're looking to do is have an additional Title V. Hold on, let me just see if I have.
I
can look up
thought they did one at the very beginning, but that could be more than 2 years old.
They did do one because it was requested back then. And just want to, before we go down that rabbit hole. I know for a fact it was done.
And so
But
it really
I
is
think we
all
just need to see a copy of it, either within 2 years or within 3 years if it also has pumping records.
And so I think we should approve it for conditional, to a current Title V, because if we've got it, then we're covered. And if we don't have it, I wouldn't expect us to waive that requirement. And so I think we can vote to approve the plan. And if it's current, we're good. And if it's not current, we'll need a new one.
And it has to be within 2 years, you said?
Within 2 years, Jamal, unless they've been pumping the system on a yearly basis, then that Title V inspection would be good for 3 years.
Okay. Yearly.
So, and Jamal, I think we don't need to resolve that to vote on it, because if we are current, then you've satisfied the condition, and if we're not current, then we wouldn't waive the condition, and we need it anyway. Does that
If you
sound
could
okay?
just hold on a minute, I'm in my documents. I'm looking to see when we had it.
Oh, perfect.
We have a Title V inspection report. It was August 6th of 2018. So
that
it's
yeah.
more than
5 years.
3 years old.
Okay. So
The
it
way
sounds like,
to help with the, at least the resources that'll be needed is maybe if you can hire the same person, it won't be as difficult to do that Title V inspection. That's your choice.
And
All right,
it
so
was done by Harry Campersall.
by who?
Thanks, Ellen. Harry Campbell,
Holliston Sewer Service.
and he's still in.
Ellen, if it's easy for you, would you be able to email that to Jamal?
That, yeah, if you could
yeah, I
email that
will.
copy to me, that would be
I can do that after the meeting.
Perfect.
sure.
Jamal, does that work for you?
That's fine. So
Perfect.
you're gonna, as of now, we're gonna need another Title V report.
Yep. And then what I would say is let's do it conditional to a current Title V, because if somehow they've gotten a Title V that we don't have in the file, like that would still satisfy me. It's just all we have is we're seeing August of 18, which would need a new one. But I think our condition is still a current Title V.
And I think we need a passing current Title V.
That's
Perfect.
correct.
So let
That's
me
very
take a
good point.
stab at the motion. Do I have a motion to approve the building plans dated January 4th, 2023, conditional to a deed recording for the 2 basement rooms shall not be bedrooms, as well as a current passing Title V?
And didn't Daryl say that you wanted to stipulate that the unfinished room in the basement remain unfinished?
And that the unfinished storage space in the basement will remain unfinished.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing
Is a
none.
deed recording,
Oh, go ahead,
is a
Jamal.
deed, is a deed recording something that the homeowner has to do?
Ellen usually prepares it.
Yes, I'll draft it and email it to them, and they need to record it.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I will draft the document and email it to the applicant. And they will need to fill it out, have it notarized, bring it to the Registry of Deeds. And then when they provide me with a copy of the recorded document, then Mark can go forward if the Title V has been received. With
Okay.
the
When you do draft it, do you mind also CCing me in the draft,
Oh,
please?
oh,
Along
yeah,
with the
yeah. Oh, yeah,
plans?
yeah, I would.
That's all from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamal. Hearing no further discussion,
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca, I at least couldn't hear you on that one.
You hear me now?
Yep,
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. All right, Jamal, have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
All
Jamal.
right, perfect. And then, Mark, I don't know, are we, do we have anything else for, is Eric joining us for civilized, or do we want to just do Nason Hill?
Well, we could do Nason Hill now. If Eric's here, that's fine. I don't think he has any other business on the agenda. I know Rob Truax is representing Lot 1A at Zero Bogastow, so he'll be here for the meeting, but that's up to the board.
I guess, do we expect Eric to join for 132 Nason Hill?
I do not expect him to join.
So why don't we just get that one out? Because I don't see Rob and he's on in a little bit, so we can get Eric, we can get 132 Nason done, and then do Dan, and then have Rob when we get to the 750.
That sounds good. So if Eric's not here, 132 Nason Hill Road, as you can see here, it's a replacement septic system. Due to the drought this year, especially when we tested in the summer, it was mid-July. We had difficulty. We couldn't find groundwater, and they could only dig so deep. So they were allowed to use the data, which was valid and on an approved plan at our office, the data for the groundwater from the era when they did that, which was a few years back. And so Eric has noted that, and they did 5 test pits. If you see the driveway coming up from Nason Hill Road, they originally were trying on the left side of the driveway, and then they decided to go to the right side, which in my view is better anyways, because they were able to incorporate the previous soil testing. And so we went over the plan. There was a revision required, and that's been resolved. There was a little, Paul Sonia was working with Eric, and he did half the day and Eric did the other half the day. So the numbers on the deep holes were not correct, and Eric did straighten that out. So they are using deep holes 3, 4, and 5 for the test area that were done in July. And it is a replacement. Let me just turn this over. They're designing for the existing bedroom count right now. It's 4 bedrooms. And I just want to double check that. Yeah, it's for 440 gallons. No garbage grinder is permitted. And he has a very large note over to the far right. There's schedule of elevations a little further up. And as you can see, it's trenches. Engineers are tending to go to trenches if they don't need to request waivers from groundwater. Go ahead, Ellen. Oh, Ellen, I'm sorry, I think you might have wanted to say something. So that's the plan. It's very simple, not simple, but it's a general type septic system with the leaching trenches and the septic tank up near the house.
And no variances, Mark?
No variances, and except for the deed recording is going to need a deed recording, so I don't forget that.
Okay. And so really the reason we're talking about it was just to kind of validate this is what we did related to due to the drought conditions is sort of why we're talking about it tonight.
Yes, because Frempta works in most cases if you can get the hole deep enough to find the groundwater. In this case, groundwater could have been another 10 feet deeper at that time. We had a very severe drought this summer, so they weren't the only ones having trouble trying to determine groundwater. And if they
and I think that really speaks to the previous conversation we've had around things like models and other strategies to figure out how do we make sure that we are accounting for the fact that the conditions in a given year may not be representative of the lifetime of that system.
That is correct. And if problem here is the soil wasn't that bad. So perk rates were less than 2 and 4 minutes per inch. And in that type of soil, which is more of a sand, a silty sand possibly, the models will not show as much as it would in a tighter soil or a till. So they had that against them as well. The good soil, but at the same time, the models did not show up in the soil testing.
Okay. And so Mark, do you just need a vote on us to approve the plan conditional to the garbage grinder restriction?
That is correct.
Perfect. Any further comments from the board?
No,
Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the plan as provided conditional to a garbage grinder deed recording? A garbage grinder restriction deed recording?
so moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Aye. Sounds good. Thanks, Mark. And Mark, I guess we've got 8 minutes. We can either go to the other stuff, or if
Yeah,
there's
no, I don't see a problem, and I don't know if Rob's here yet, but I don't even see a problem going to, but if you want to wait, we might want to wait for him to be here if we can fit it in for Zero August stuff.
Okay, sounds good. We can wait on that. And then we've got Dan at 7:30 and 8:10. So why don't we, I guess, why don't we do some of the food permits, or actually, let's do the wastewater discharge permit. Does that work okay? And so, Ellen, lovely to have you. I'm not sure if you're at the last meeting, but I'm glad you're at this one. I don't know if it's best for you or Mark to give us a little bit of background on the groundwater disposal permit, or the groundwater discharge permit.
That wouldn't be me. Darryl, actually, Darryl requested that this be on the agenda.
Perfect. Then Daryl, you get the baton.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I'm
Yes, we
hopping
received
here.
this notice. I was wondering why you were talking about groundwater discharge. Okay, so let me just remember what it was, what comment I had. So they're
And Daryl,
renewing this
you're-
permit. Oh, here's my comment that we could make to them, although I doubt there's much we could do about it other than to call the issue to their attention. When you
Just-
look at the criteria for the groundwater discharge permits, the only thing they have to take into account when they're evaluating potential impacts from the wastewater, treated wastewater SAS, it's a lot like just our septic fields, but there's a pretreatment plant ahead of it. So it's better, but that doesn't mean perfect. They have to look at PWSs that might be impacted, but not private wells. And that property has a private well for every one of the units that's there, not to mention neighboring wells. There are PWSs in, is that official? I think Holliston has a couple of their municipal wells just across the border.
Yeah, that rings a bell.
So they're probably addressing that, but that would be the only thing I could think of as a public comment, is to say, please take into consideration private water supplies as well in the
Yeah.
evaluation.
I can add one point. I did speak to the operator of the small wastewater treatment plant there and explain, after I reached out to DEP to request the reports of that, because we don't get that much information on this small wastewater treatment plant. So the person from DEP at the bottom of this letter responded immediately, and in turn, the small wastewater treatment plant operator responded all within the same morning and agreed that if we're not getting them, that, and I said electronically is fine, that we would like to have those reports just so we're in the loop, because it could be a point where a resident may have a concern, and if we don't have the reports or the person to reach, then we would be at a loss. So he made sure that we knew he was a small wastewater treatment plant operator and could be reached if there were any questions or concerns from the residents. So with that said, we now have that information on file. It's in our Rolodex.
Okay, that's good. And I'm not saying, I'm not sure what their performance record has been in terms of meeting the discharge standards that they need to meet, but just so people know, there's no guarantee, since in Dover, one of the projects there that had a small treatment plant was not reaching quality standards year after year for quite some time. I don't know where they're at now, but that was a long-term issue.
Well, and I found that the communication was lacking during the process of them building this plant. So now I hope it will, that they will start getting us all the required information that we would like to have on file electronically.
Right, just be good to know if there was an issue so that we could, or they should be warning the homeowners if they're having exceedances. The other thing is,
And Daryl, I just want to make sure I kind of understand the issue. So the issue here, or the kind of thing that you wanted to flag was, we've got the wastewater treatment plant. It is looking for public water supplies. The way that Whitney Farms has been constructed, there is not a public water supply because they've gone to individual level wells, but that
Yep.
not contaminating those wells should be a consideration, or not having an adverse event impacting those wells shouldn't be ignored just because they're not a public water supply.
yes, although that is the way the regulations are written, that they only need to consider public water supplies, but they do look at things like travel time to it and how short that is. And frankly, the shorter the travel time, the more stringent the regulations. And that might be appropriate, especially given that how many units are over there, Mark? I mean, there are a lot of wells. I think it's 30 something units. That's
I
a
believe
lot
it's
of wells.
37, but don't quote me. It might be more than that. They're not finished. They're still building down there.
Yeah, but it will be, and that's a lot to be. So I would be happy to, I think we have 30 days till after a public hearing is posted. I don't know if it's already been posted and what that date is.
I didn't see it on at least the cover sheet. It was like, the public knows for this individual groundwater occurred on, not filled in yet. So I don't
Yes.
know.
And I spoke to Belinda, who's noted there, and she said she'd try to let me know when it was posted in the environmental monitor, but we
Okay.
could check. But in any case, I'd be happy to write something very short,
Sounds great.
just to bring it to their attention.
That sounds fabulous, particularly since I don't have any deliverables. I love it. So that sounds good. It's now 7:30, and I think, Dan, did I see you on here?
Yes,
Perfect. And so we've got a variance hearing for 22 Golding Street East. And Ellen, do we have all the green cards?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, yes, we do. Everything's all set.
I've been waiting like 6 weeks to say, Ellen, do we have all the green cards? So I'm feeling really excited about it. Perfect. Dan, do you want to introduce yourself and walk us through?
yes, Dan McIntyre representing the homeowners of 22 Goulding East. This is a 4-bedroom house that was constructed in 1971. It's between South Main Street and Lake Street on Goulding Street East. The road is at the bottom of the page. The existing septic system is right in the front yard, and the well is in the backyard. Based on the location of the well and the topography of the site, the only place to put the system is to put it back where the existing system is, right in the front yard. Soil testing was relatively good. The soils perked well. We were able to locate the groundwater table, and it's at about 6 feet below grade. So it meets the Sherborn requirement for that. So we're proposing to put in a conventional stone and pipe trench system. And we're going to meet not only the Title 5 4-foot groundwater offset, but we're also meeting the Sherborn 5-foot groundwater offset. However, we are looking for a few other dimensional variances from both the Sherborn regulations and Title 5. One of these, the Title 5 requirement or the waiver related to the septic tank and the pump tank. The plumbing for this house comes out from the bottom of the slab of the basement. So the existing tank is relatively deep. And we looked at that and had a plumber come out and look at it, and there was really no way to raise the plumbing up higher. So the new tanks were also going to be down deep in the 3 to 4 foot range below grade. Title 5 requires less than 3 feet over a tank. We're going to exceed that, so we're asking for a local upgrade waiver on that. And we specified the proper H20 tanks with the rubber booted connections as required by Title 5 to get that local upgrade waiver. The other waivers are related to offset to well. Sherborn, in this case, requires 125-foot offset since the well is up gradient and the perk rate is greater than 3 minutes per inch. We're at about 112, which meets Title 5. And finally, offset to the property line. To make this all work in the front yard, we've got I think it's about a 12-foot offset to the front property line, which meets Title 5, but Sherborn requires a 20-foot offset, so we're asking for that waiver. So other than that, I think I can open it up for questions.
So I'm curious, when a system has to go back in where the prior system was the failure in any way related to the condition of the soils that are present? And does that present a problem or not in this case, or never?
Actually, one of the test pits we went down in through one of the trenches and next to it, and the soils around the trenches were relatively good. The old clay tile pipes were completely sealed up. And the Title 5 inspector also noted that there's a lot of sludge in the D box itself. So I think it's just an accumulation of solids over the last, 50, 60 years that the system's been in operation that failed it, and not the soils.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, maybe I missed it, Dan, but how far is it from the on-property well? You don't need a waiver for that?
No, that's the waiver we're asking for, is the 112 feet.
Oh, so how far is it from the adjacent 20 Goulding well?
Well, we put the 125-foot radius on there. So
Oh,
we
okay.
exceed that.
Okay,
by
okay. I was
probably
confused.
20,
That's what
30 feet.
So you're asking for the on-property upgradient well? Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the well across the street and the well to the left is more than 200 feet away.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks.
Perfect. Any other questions? I've got the plans up, or should I jump to the variances?
And if I may, Dan, what was the depth of the existing septic system?
It was probably about 2 feet below grade. If I look up the looks here.
Yeah, I was trying to.
Yeah. It
wonder-
wasn't quite into the groundwater table. But we are raising the yard. The front yard is kind of like a bowl. So we have the ability to raise the trenches up and meet the 5-foot groundwater offset.
Yeah, and you're only a
Still
foot and a
have nice
half.
yard.
And it's nice that you designed it to be only 1.5 feet from the top of ground, so it's not buried too deep where it may not be getting enough oxygen. So I'm not for sure if that was part of the reason it might have failed too, but it could have been many reasons. As you said, they found sludge in the tank, so, but thank you.
Right.
I mean, it made it 50 years. It could have done worse.
Exactly.
Perfect. Let me jump over to the variances. Is it okay with folks if I jump in?
Yes,
Perfect. Do I have a motion for variance to section 10.1A, distance to upgradient well to be at 125 feet with 112 feet being provided to the on-site well? For the reasons discussed.
so
So moved.
moved. Second,
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. Do I have a motion for a waiver to section 10.2, property line offset to be 20 feet with 12 feet being provided?
So moved.
Second,
Seconded.
Further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. Moving to our Title 5 local upgrade waivers, do I have a motion for waiver to 15.4051B, which provides for no greater than 36 inches of cover over the tank with 3.7 feet being provided and 4.2 feet at the septic tank due to the conditions described?
So moved.
Seconded.
Another question, Dan. So is it going to be pumped to the field,
Yes,
the SAS?
yes, because the tanks are so low, we're
Mhm.
pumping. If we could have raised the plumbing up, we could have made it a gravity system. But the plumber said there was no way to do it.
Okay,
Any further discussion? And I can't remember, do I have a motion on this one or am I waiting on a motion?
we have a motion.
Perfect, and I didn't hear any further discussion.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. And do I have a motion for a waiver to 15.4051J with tank piping being 7 inches above seasonal height groundwater, which is less than the required 12. Again, this relates to the plumbing height and will have the required rubber connections.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. Perfect. And so, Mark, are the plans ready for approval?
Yes, they are conditional to a deed restriction for the garbage grinder waiver.
Perfect. We have a motion to approve the plans conditional to the deed recording for the garbage grinder prohibition.
So moved.
Second,
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. Sounds fabulous. Dan, we'll see you again at 8:10.
All right, thank you very much.
Perfect. All right, let me just see. Do we have? I don't see. I don't see GLM on for the lot 1A at 0 Bagasto, so we will continue to hold that. Do you want to go through the food establishment permit for Wild Robin's Farm?
Sure.
Perfect. So this seemed look good to me. There's a sodium posting, and I think the applicant noted on the application that they don't use water or septic for the processing there. And I think this is, my understanding is this is driven by the state requirement for a food establishment. And it's a food establishment because they're selling food, though they may not be preparing it on site. Do I understand that right, Mark?
That is correct.
Perfect. So do I have a motion to approve the food establishment permit for Wild Robin's Farm, subject to this? Do we need a sodium posting?
Yes, yes, you do.
Subject to the sodium posting?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. And then let's go from that to Pine Hill School, food establishment. And I can't remember, did they have a sodium posting?
No, they don't. They meet the requirement. I think it was 12 milligrams per liter.
And that wells off the beaten path of any salt treated roads.
Yeah, it's sort of out behind the school, right?
Correct.
Perfect. So do I have a motion to approve the Pine Hill Elementary School food establishment permit?
So
So moved.
moved. Second,
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
And Matt Vitale, aye. Now I'm also finding myself reflecting on tater tots. I'm not sure why. Let's go to the Holliston sewer service installer permit. And Mark, any issues with Holliston sewer?
No, and he usually would have his application in sooner. He had some delay with the mail.
Okay, perfect. Any further discussion? Do I have a motion to approve the disposal works installer permit for Holliston sewer?
So moved.
Second,
It should be conditional to a pre-construction conference.
Ellen, thank God you're back. Conditional to a pre-construction conference.
Moved again.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. And then let's close it out with the DJ Morris excavating of Sudbury disposal works installer permit. Mark, any issues here?
No, recommend approval with that pre-construction conference. No.
And they've been in town before. I just didn't see any references listed. Are they someone?
No,
we've-
They've been working in town for the last 10 years, I'd say, and they're actively working right now on a couple systems.
Yeah, and I just say a lot of when they're renewals, they don't bother filling out the references.
Because they're like, you're one of our references.
Yeah,
Sounds good. Any other discussion on that? Do I have a motion to approve the disposal works installer permit for DJ Morris conditional to the pre-construction meeting?
So moved.
Seconded.
Second,
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. We've got 5 minutes before we've got our posted meeting for 25-27. I don't see GLM. Does anybody else see GLM? Perfect. Do you want to just?
I do not, but the owner of the property is here, just so the board knows.
Perfect. So why don't we then do, I think regulation review is going to take more than 5 minutes and it's probably a good topic to close out with. Did folks get a chance to look at the minutes for 12-7, 12-21 and 1-4?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. And I know Mark had provided some edits for 12-7 and 12-21. Looking at those look fine to me. So I'd like to break it into 2 parts since I wasn't here for the 4th. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes as addended for December 7th and December 21st?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Carol.
Sorry, Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. And then I think Ellen had circulated the January 4th minutes. Any edits to those, or are we okay to make a motion to approve?
Matt Beavers submitted just a couple little ones that I have, so.
Perfect. Do I have a motion to approve the January 4th minutes?
So moved.
Second,
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale abstain. Perfect. Nice to get the minutes squared away. Well, I feel like I'm gonna have to tell ghost stories for 3 minutes.
How about agenda items for next time?
You could do lot 1A at Augusto Brook because there are no variances. It's pretty much just Mark recommending approval.
Perfect. Let's do it. I like the optimism. Mark, let me pull it up, and if you have any comments to offer, feel free to do so.
Okay, it is a vacant lot. The person to the, I would say the left of it owns the property at this point, or sold the property, owned it originally. And they went out, they did soil testing. And Rob and I talked a little bit about the groundwater, and it does conform to all the testing that is shown. And the well, this is scaled, just so everyone knows, this is scaled 1:30, so it does look a little smaller. So the well may seem closer than what it is. It is the correct distance. We had perk rates, 4 minutes per inch and 6. And you'll see, I'm going to get to that page as well. I have the plan.
I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just had to move the plan away from the computer. So this plan is being proposed for a single family dwelling. And you'll see the well is to the left of the house. You'll see that little symbol there. Sorry, what I was saying earlier, Rebecca, it's scaled 1:30. So every 1 inch equals 30 feet. So it appears smaller, but they are allowed to scale it in that 1:30 scale. Soil testing passed, groundwater passed, and it is suitable for new construction. And it has gone through conservation.
Perfect. Any further discussion by the board as I try to figure out how to successfully Zoom? I'm like now entirely my father. And then, Mark, is this subject to a garbage grinder restriction?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Do I have a motion to approve the plans as provided, subject to a garbage grinder restriction deed recording?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. Ellen, you timed it perfectly. We're at 7:50. And then, Mark, I don't see GLM on right now. Do you want to kind of give some of the background in terms of some of the
Sure.
feedback you gave to Rob earlier?
Yeah, and maybe the homeowner's here to update us as well, because he has been made aware of the plan for the property at 25 to 27 North Main Street. There is a design here that does not meet state requirements as it relates to the use of the Elgin system in general, in remedial use. They are planning, as the board can see, adding an addition of a 20-foot by 20-foot addition, so that and I spoke with DEP about this, that states that there is new design flow.
And
And
then-
Rob has just joined, so
Oh, perfect. Rob, we just were introducing the plan for 25-27. And sort of, I think this is one that is similar to the issue that came up for 226 Western back in December, where the sort of communication and design was for the remedial use. but the remedial use wouldn't allow for additional design flow. And so that I think the same sets of solutions will probably be there. I think one of my goals for tonight is to just make sure that if there's anything from the board that's clear, so we can get that corrected and resubmitted without having any further surprises. I think the other piece that I was surprised by, just based on the location of the property, is this is probably our densest area of public water supplies in town. So I was surprised that there's nothing within 400 feet. I think Mark had asked to have those plotted out for the adjacent public water supplies. Did I get that right, Mark?
That is correct, Matt. And the other thing I just wanted to make note, this is a variance hearing. So I don't know if we have all the green cards and if.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Mark. Ellen, do we have all the green cards for this?
Sorry, I didn't unmute again. Yes, we do.
Okay,
Awesome.
perfect. And so, Mark, my recollection from the communication is that we need to have the general use, not the remedial use, to allow changes to design flow, and that the feedback from DEP, given that there's proposed addition, is that then has an incremental design flow, so we need to be under that general use application. And we just need to see the public water supply, because CNL is like 2 buildings over, the firehouse is across the street. And to just making sure that we're kind of.
That is correct. And I spoke to Claire Golden today at DEP at the Northeast region, and she did say for any additional design flows being proposed that you cannot seek waivers or local upgrade approvals from the state. The other one that is being requested is that they did an alternative to a percolation test by testing it in a lab. And that does not allow for any new additional design flow as well. So those 2 items are some of the major items, and including the wells that will need to be looked at and resolved.
And Mark, the percolation test, that's a state requirement?
Yes, they have a state written requirement that you can, if ground, in this case, they couldn't get down where the ground, they had fill on the site down to about 6 feet. And then the naturally occurring soil started showing up, but groundwater was within a foot. So with that all happening, they couldn't get a percolation test done without coming back maybe to do a dewatered perk. With that said, they asked to conduct lab testing to determine the perk rate, but the state has definition, and in writing, they note that that can only be done for remediation repairs, not for any new construction or new design flow.
Okay. And Claire's characterization of, given the proposed addition slab that's listed on the plan, that needs to be associated with an incremental design flow. So that's also coming from the state.
That is correct.
And so it seems like it might be most appropriate to continue the hearing so that we can get those pieces updated and corrected. Mark, in terms of the timing for the percolation test, is this something? I don't remember ever doing that as a condition. So does that need to happen before this can be reconsidered? And
yes, if they decided not to do the new addition and did this as a repair, just to replace the existing failed system, that could be looked at, and this plan would be valid. But because they're, and there's the other issue of the wells and a couple other items I've noted to the engineer and the owner. But as it relates to the new design flow, the additional design flow, the Elgin cannot be used the way it's being presented, and that is they're asking for a 2-foot reduction, that they be able to place the Elgin system within 2 feet of groundwater, and that at 2 feet to groundwater, and as well as the perk test be considered under the alternative to percolation testing process, and that cannot be allowed for any proposal that shows additional design flow.
And I guess, Mark, my question is, if we think that we can get this resolved fairly quickly, as was the case for 226 Western, I think it makes sense to continue the hearing.
Oh, yes, I would agree. Give the engineer a chance to, and I give the engineer.
But my question, Mark, is for the timing of the perk testing, what are the constraints on that? Like, when could that testing happen?
Well, they could do that any time of the year based on, based on the fact that they have to stay within our season, but they can ask for waivers from our requirements for additional flow. But as it relates to doing that, they may have to go out and do what they call a dewatered perk. And that is possible. There are procedures to do that.
Okay, so it sounds like it makes sense to continue this to give us a shorter interval for follow-up while abiding by the notifications to abutters, but would like to see those issues corrected. And my preference is to, again, I think and again, Rob, I'm sorry, we kind of got started at the time, but I don't want to cut you off on it, but I also don't want to have a detailed discussion if we're going to need to have one on another date. And I'd prefer to stick with, kind of identifying these are the things that we'd like to see adjusted, continue it to, is this something we can continue to the February meeting?
I have a question about that. Mark, you had mentioned that an additional variance to section 8.02 would be needed. Is that right?
That is correct. And there will be
Okay.
additional waivers that will be needed to our local regulations
Okay,
if they decide on this design.
okay, so that would mean they did not do proper abutter notification.
That
So
is
new abutter notification will be required. So taking into account, they'll have to decide if they want to do the dewatered perk and when that could be scheduled. And then if they'd have time to correct the design and re-notify all of the abutters with all of the needed variances. Because what's listed on this letter for tonight isn't, there will be more. So they have to
Okay.
re-notify anyway.
Yeah,
And-
you're correct.
So you wouldn't continue, you'd close this hearing and just have a new variance hearing.
And Ellen, is it realistic to get that on for the March 1st hearing, or is that something that would take more time? Because I can't imagine we'd get there for February 4th with notification.
No, February 1st wouldn't work. February 15th would be very close because it's already after the 15th of January. So March 1st would be probably the first one, but that's up to Mark, if he thinks that's enough time, and Rob, whatever he thinks.
And I was just going to say, I'll consult with Rob to see what next steps he would like to take before we decide on a date for the next hearing.
Yeah,
And
so
then-
you can just close this hearing and then I'll just schedule a new one when we receive the new plan and the new letter.
Okay, and so Bob, or my goal for tonight is to make sure that everything we think we're gonna want, we're communicating clearly so there's no surprises to the applicant and we're able to resolve that as quickly as possible. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. It sounds like the dewatered perk testing part of it, the 8.02 variance is part of it, the correction of the Elgin to general, not remedial use is part of it, given, and again, for Bob, the applicant, my recollection was that one of the big drivers for this is expanding the space for Steve's bike shop. And so I can't imagine that you would want to pursue that without the proposed additional slab and space. Is my mental model?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
So I think we should approach all of this under the assumption that one of our central goals is to accommodate increased design flow. And again, we've got local variances. This isn't a residential property, but I think taking a similar approach that we have for residential properties where we allow additional design flow with replacement systems feels consistent to me. I think it's something to sort of say, now this is part of what we're thinking about. When I talked to Mark about it earlier, the incremental additional square footage seemed like it would be well within the typical additional design flow we allow for +1 bedroom. So that didn't seem like it'd be an issue. Mark, are there any other issues that you would flag?
And it's been mentioned, but that will give the engineer time to review any abutting wells that are within 200 feet for private wells and 400 feet for public water supplies.
Okay, perfect. Bob, any questions that you have? And then Rob, any comments that you have?
None from me.
Okay. Bob, any other-
I really don't have any comments, Mr. Chairman. I just felt like, this all came about this afternoon.
Okay,
This plan's been in the file for a while now. This would have been a better discussion 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago even. You know, we
I mean, the
filed
flip side, Rob, is I'd say like, to me, this doesn't feel subtle, like the regulation for, like, I totally hear what you're saying, but this doesn't feel like one, to be honest.
No, I get that. I understand what you're saying, but it's just, me and
Yeah.
Mark could have had this conversation 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree, but the plan was on for review on December 20th, once we received conservation approval. And on December 20th, there were plans ahead of it, and all the plans get reviewed according to the line they're in. So, but I do apologize that the review indicated these items, that the review came to you late. Not that there are issues with the plan, but that it came to you late. But I did offer to try to get to you today, but I understand one day is difficult, but we can work together, Rob, and try to
I know, we will. We'll see
Yep.
what we can work out on this. It's gonna be difficult because it will be difficult to do a perk on that site. There's, you know, there's approximately 7, 8 feet of fill, and the groundwater was right there, and it's very difficult to dewater and try and do a dewatered perk. I mean, we did this in October, and that was pretty dry.
Yeah.
So to go out there anytime now, it's gonna be wetter, and as springtime comes, you know, it's gonna get even wetter. So I don't know how to handle that. I'll have to discuss it with the client and see what options we can come up with.
Okay. So it sounds like we've got next steps there. So do I have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded.
You gonna vote?
Hello?
Did we lose Matt?
Oh, hearing none. Can you guys hear me?
Now we
Now we
can.
can, yep, okay.
Perfect. I was waiting for Daryl.
Okay, Daryl, I.
Matt
was
Beaver's
waiting for
eye.
you.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. And then Rob, just so you're aware, we reviewed the lot 1A at 0 Bogastow Brook already and approved that one.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Let me know.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm
Um,
gonna stay on because I think we have Weston Ave a little later in the evening.
Yep, we've got you on there for 8:30.
Okay,
And Dan, I think you're gonna have to bear with us for 7 minutes while we talk about agenda items for 2-2.
okay.
Perfect.
I don't have anything scheduled yet. There were no variance hearings or anything.
And again, I think that should read, I'm pretty sure it's February 1st, not February 2nd, although I'm excited that I got to say 2-2.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's February 1st.
And so I guess, can we put an agenda item on, we submitted the draft regulations for the wells to town council. I don't think we've gotten feedback yet, but would hopefully get feedback by that one to discuss the proposed well regulations. Does that seem realistic? And I'm happy to reach out to council to see if that timeline is realistic for them, but we can at least put a placeholder.
Yeah, it was for the the septic and well application procedures, right?
I
That's-
think so. Did we also do the well testing procedure? We hadn't
No.
gotten.
No,
Okay, yeah, so let's have an agenda topic for that one, at least as a placeholder. My hope is that we'll be able to kind of follow up on it. And then do we want to have a follow-up for the budget request? Because I think we've got that meeting on the 25th. I don't know if we want to report out on the status of it. Or will we just be describing for advisory and we won't have anything sort of punchline wise?
There might be, I think relaying back whatever
Okay.
happened with advisory, such as, yeah, I guess can't talk about it now, but.
Perfect. Any other agenda topics that folks have?
Yeah, so I've converted the track changes in Word into the standard format for the section 2 and 3 updates that we've gone over. And Matt has been reviewing those and making comments. And so we will have that ready for like maybe the final check before going to town council next time.
That sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Does that timeline feel realistic to you guys? If it does, especially if we don't have a heavy agenda, it's nice to have a little bit of time for the regulatory discussions.
No, I think that's doable.
Perfect.
I think it's very close.
Love it. That sounds fantastic. Any other agenda topics for the first? Perfect. Maybe I think we've got 4 minutes, and I wonder if, Ellen, we discussed this when you were away, but if you can just kind of give us a brief overview of the existing permitting process and how that communication goes out and how that process works. That feels like we could go over it in 3 minutes before we get to our 8:10.
I don't know what you mean by the permitting. You mean
So when we do the annual permits with the water testing and the other pieces, I
like
think,
for food establishments?
yeah. And so I think there was one of the meetings where you were gone, where we were talking about, boy, we should really do this. And then I think you emailed Daryl and I and said, we do that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
And
for
so if you
food-
can just review that, because I think that just went to Daryl and I, just to catch the board up as we then, probably in between variance or after variance hearings, think about, is there a sort of a fee escalation for late permits?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So for like food establishment permits, installer permits, they all expire on December 31st, every calendar year. So during the first week in November, every year, Jean sends a form letter to every applicant, food establishment, installer, any other, the catering, all of them, a form letter reminding them of that their existing permit expires December 31st, encloses with the letter a renewal application, tells them the renewal fee. If they need, for food establishments, there's a handout that tells them what parameters they need to test for and explains that the testing should be done during the month of either November or December for the January renewal. And they're sent out the first week in November, whatever day she has them ready. And that's why in typically late November, you start seeing all the renewals come in. If as it gets into December, say by December 15th, if those that have not yet renewed, she sends a reminder. So they get everything again. A lot of times, I will say, installers do not always renew their permit until they get a job in town. So some might not renew until July because they're taking a chance of saving the $150 fee if they don't get a job that year.
That
But-
makes sense, to be honest.
and yeah, so that's not a problem. What the ones that are the problem are the food establishments. So pretty much the board has always allowed renewals to come in during the month of January. And once February 1st comes, that's when they're considered delinquent. And pretty much we've never had a problem except for that one establishment last year who didn't renew until after multiple reminders and calls and letters. He finally renewed, I think it was, I don't know, August or September. And so far, he still hasn't renewed this year, but we did get his water analysis. So
We're getting closer.
yeah, I expect, since we get the water analysis, all we need now is the application and fee. And I'm sure Jean will be reminding him because I think the water analysis just came in
I think this, yeah,
Late-
earlier this week, I think.
last week or early this week.
Perfect. So Ellen, I think that's a great overview. So I'm going to put a pin in it now and pivot to Dan McIntyre and 22 Farm Road. And then we can sort of see how long that takes and maybe talk a little bit about the fee schedule in between or after the 226. So let me pull that up. And then Dan, you're welcome to introduce yourself and add context while I work on sharing the screen.
Sure, Dan McIntyre, representing the homeowner, Sarah Tipton, who is also on the call tonight. This is 22 Farm Road. To orientate you, Farm Road is at the top of the screen. Over to the left-hand side are the railroad tracks, so we're right near where the railroad tracks cross Farm Road.
Excuse me, Dan, can I interrupt you for one
And
second?
we've got the green cards, Ellen.
Yes, we have all the green cards.
See, this is the kind of shenanigans that happen when you're away. So it's a good thing you're back.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, go
Yeah.
ahead.
All right. So this is a 4-bedroom home. The well is in the backyard, and the well radius takes up pretty much all of the lot, except for the front corner where we're proposing the septic system. Currently, we're served by a cesspool and an overflow cesspool for the black water, and then a separate dry well for the laundry. The site is characterized by some fairly large ledge outcrops, but we did do some soil testing up there, and we found ledge in each test hole, but we did find sufficient soil here to put in a septic system. There is a high groundwater table. I think it's actually probably a perched water table. We didn't actually find any groundwater at the time of testing, but the models were a good indication of where the groundwater would be. So we're proposing to put in an alternative technology system, the Elgin system, in a trench configuration. Due to the slope of the yard over in that area, we're going to do step trenches with the Elgins. And we meet Title V of the design, with the exception of the groundwater offset that we're asking for. The Elgins allow for a 4-foot to 2-foot groundwater offset under Title V. Their remedial use approval allows that as part of that DEP approval. So we didn't ask for a separate local upgrade waiver on that, but we are asking for the Sherborn variance on the 5-foot to 2-foot groundwater offset to allow a system to go in this area. If we were to try to meet the full groundwater offset on this slope and the proximity of the property line, there's no way we would be able to meet the grading to make it work, even with the step trenches, or we would require a significant retaining wall over there, which would be very tall and very, very expensive. So we are asking for that waiver on the groundwater offset. In fact, I think those are the only 2 waivers we're asking for, is the groundwater offset from 5 foot down to 2 foot using the alternative technologies, and the fact that the groundwater is less than 5 feet below grade, which is just a naturally occurring condition that we can't design around anyways.
Where's their well? Where's the on-property well, Dan? Oh,
It's right behind the house down there.
okay. Now it was just off the off the scale.
So
And
that's an
so you meet
upgrading.
all the wells. You meet all 125 on everything, right?
Yes, we do. And based on the perk rate and the topography, that's the Sherborn requirement for all the wells in the area, 125 feet.
I mean,
So we will be, I did mention that the laundry is connected to a dry well now. We're going to be doing some plumbing inside the house to reroute that. So we've got the laundry connecting into the sewer pipe, and we're all going to the new septic system.
I mean, certainly this feels like sort of one of the challenging Sherborn lots where you're like, I've got a little chunk of where I don't have wells, and I'm dealing with ledge, and I'm dealing with groundwater and property lines, and it certainly seems like a nice improvement compared to the baseline conditions. So sounds good. Are there questions that folks have while we've got the plan up, or are we ready to jump to the letter?
Did you say what, like, so how many bedrooms is this?
This is a 4-bedroom home.
4-bedroom. Okay. Just,
And
And
that
no
has been
change in design
verified.
flow, are we?
No, this is it's actually a 4-bedroom house. There was no design on record for this, but the assessors have it as a 4-bedroom, and it is actually a 4-bedroom house.
Okay. Perfect. Any other questions for folks? I've got the plan up, otherwise I'll jump to the letter.
I miss seeing how many acres. Is it over an acre or at least 1 acre?
1.1 acres.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Let me get to 22. All right. Do I have a motion for a variance to section 8.01 groundwater offset of 5 feet with 2 feet being provided using an IA technology?
So moved.
second,
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd just say for the homeowner, there's not a lot of soil to do cleansing of stuff that goes into the septic system. So just be careful of what you put in.
I'm so intrigued about, I feel like there's some natural limitations of what one must put in. But yeah, I think being extra cautious given the proximity makes a ton of sense. Any further discussion?
I'd just like to ask, what does that mean?
Anything that you wouldn't, well, there are a lot of things that go in a septic that you wouldn't eventually want to drink, but septic systems are pretty good with dealing with biological waste, but kind of heavy duty cleaners and things like that, they are not necessarily as good at that. And that could disrupt the bacteria that are helping to break down the other things that are heading out there. So if you can avoid, use gentler cleaning products or vinegar and baking soda.
Because you said, so Dale, I think the point you're making is you have less inches of biologically active soil between your effluent and the groundwater. So making sure that you do what you can to maintain it in good health and spirits will help it perform as well as possible and decontaminating it. And then to Dan's point, you're using the IA technology, which also helps mitigate some of those risks as compared to a traditional system. Compared to the existing cesspool, I think you are doing a big upgrade for your local groundwater, which is great. This is just us sort of punctuating it, but I think this is much better than what you started with.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Sarah, as we talked, at the end of this project, you're going to get an as-built plan of the septic system. And at that time, we provide you with some maintenance suggestions and recommendations on what you should and shouldn't put down a septic system. So,
Ooh,
Right.
that sounds great.
Thank-
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Yep.
Perfect. Hearing no further discussion.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. Do I have a motion for variance to section 8.02, depth to seasonal height groundwater of less than 5 feet, which is a naturally occurring condition?
So moved.
Seconded.
Hearing no further discussion.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. And Mark, are the plans ready for approval?
Yes, they are conditional to deed recordings, both for the IA technology and for the garbage grinder.
Perfect. Do I have a motion to approve the plan with the deed recording for the IA technology and the garbage grinder restriction?
So moved.
Second,
Hearing no further discussion other than from my kids.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. Dan, have a good night. Appreciate your time, and Ms. Tipton, good luck with everything, and thank you for improving your groundwater.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, perfect. So I think our next agenda topic's at 8:30. I guess, one thought I have as it relates to the fee schedule is we've got lots of things that are kind of midstream to like late stream in terms of the regulatory changes, and particularly if this has not been a high priority issue or a recurring issue for a number of applicants, I would sort of favor tabling consideration of fee escalation for late permit, since it sounds like we don't really have a burning platform, and it would require the same process that all our regulatory revisions do because the fees are a regulation. And I sort of feel like we should get more things across the finish line before we start any new races. How does that pass a gut check for folks, or do people have different opinions that we want to talk about in this time before the 8:30?
So Ellen, I can't remember, for the fee schedule changes,
Mhm.
do we need public hearing for that and posting in
Yes.
the paper?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so that is, yep, all right.
So my 2 cents is I feel like the things we're working on feel like much higher priority to me than the fee schedule, given that
Excuse
in
me.
general, I think that we're on track. I do think there's a role for a discussion once we get some of these other things over the finish line, with a discussion of the fee schedule that, like, again, like I remember when our electronic health system went live and you're like, oh, this can go in the parking lot, which kind of meant that things weren't going to happen, but people thought it was a good idea. But I feel like that discussion we've had for those projects that require an inordinate or a disproportionate or atypical amount of support, for example, from the food inspector,
Yeah.
having an escalation strategy that's more global there, that I
Yep.
could imagine including late permits or higher intensity services. And I sort of feel like that feels like the right strategy, but that we should table it for now while we get the other things over and then revisit once the dust settles there. Because I do think the intent for our fees is to make it so that the town as a whole is sort of getting some compensation to pay for the cost of delivering the service. And so if we have times that we have to deliver a lot more service than is typical, having a strategy to cover those costs seems appropriate. But again, recognize, we may not have bandwidth for the moment. Does that sound acceptable to folks?
The only one I'm wondering is the reinspection fee, because it just seems like Tom's had to do I guess in the last year, it seems like he's had to do several re-inspections, and that just seems really low for the amount. I mean, he basically has to make sure things are corrected and redo the whole inspection. So that's the only one that jumps out at me as it might not be commensurate with the amount of labor.
Well,
That's
also, I mean, I think for all of them, if one is doing a more global assessment, I totally agree that 75 feels low. But even just the header of like 2012 food establishment fee schedule,
it screams it needs a revisiting.
exactly. And just to even kind of understand a little bit more, like, what's the time it takes to make sure that we're sort of not, if the intent of this is to be sort of a user fee that helps cover the cost of covering the service, I can't imagine that this continues. Like, either we were doing really good in 2012, or as a town, we're sort of subsidizing this perhaps in ways more than intended, and maybe worth revisiting globally about a sort of fee review.
I think one thing we might be able to do is, I'll say 2 things I've been thinking about regarding this. One is, if we get into the shared services that we're trying to work on, then we will get assistance with certain tasks. And one of them could be a benchmarking against what other towns charge for this kind of thing. And that would make our lives so much easier, because it's a lot of work in the past when people have had to go out and collect the information to benchmark. So that might be one thing that we could turn over to shared services, perhaps, to help us out, especially if they're dealing with multiple towns to begin with. They might have that at their fingertips. The other is maybe we look at how we apply the reinspection fee, because really what we've always worked towards is just to get people in compliance, making sure that there's safety for food establishments. And we haven't applied it as a reinspection fee. But maybe we change how we're doing that, where there's a fee for the first inspection that's part of the permit. And then if there are any issues identified, the agent goes back and food inspector and sees where things stand for things that were identified needing correction. So that seems reasonable to me to have as kind of a follow-on from the first inspection, but maybe anything thereafter for things that need repeat visit, more and more visits to make sure that they're all getting done. Maybe that's when we invoke the reinspection fee. So that might be an easy short-term way to fix.
What I might suggest is that in terms of thinking about how we sequence it, that if we can do some of the benchmarking with the MHA collaboration, or not MHA, MHAB, PHE collaboration, that would give helpful context, because it may give us ideas for how other towns are doing this. And so having that be the first step in the process, and then bringing that back to look at how it compares to our own fees and which areas might be high or low. And if things are high or low, how does that compare to our estimates of what the true cost of delivering the service is? And then go through the process of revision and public meeting and regulatory revision. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay.
Although I still think there's that option for procedurally adjusting how we're doing things and still using this fee schedule.
And so you'd sort of say, this is the fee schedule. We're using a somewhat different strategy than how we've historically applied it, but we think it's within the purview of the regulation.
Yeah, because Ellen and Mark, have we really ever charged the reinspection fee?
Not that I remember.
Nope, we never have.
Yep, so.
And so I guess one question is, if we have not historically done it and we start to do it now, is there any issue with that from a, kind of legal counsel standpoint that we should run by anybody? My two
Wait,
cents.
but it's on the books as a reinspection fee, so why
Yeah.
would that be? To me, that doesn't sound like a legal concern. I guess I think doing the sort of cross check on what our peer municipalities are charging makes a lot of sense. We do, that's what like businesses do. We should do that as a town and make sure it's just in line and commensurate with what we have to pay our food inspector. That's all,
Yeah, I think that
I
makes
also wouldn't want to change our procedure for reinspection fee without having a careful discussion with the food inspector on, whether this makes sense to approach it differently.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got some next steps in mind depending on how things play out. I mean, the PHE piece sounds like our next milestone, and then would also want to work with the food inspector to make sure that whatever we do is aligned and makes sense, kind of where the rubber meets the road. So I think we timed that perfectly. So now we can go to 226 Western. And Ellen, do we have all the green cards?
Yes, we do.
Perfect. I think given that we discussed this in some detail in the December meeting, I think that sort of what we asked Rob to provide were really updates to the plans and to the language. And so either maybe Rob, if you want to just highlight the things that are different, and then maybe we can just jump into the variances, because I think we did discuss this in some detail, and I don't know that we need to do it twice unless folks have questions. And my impression is that nothing substantially changed with the plans other than the variance requests. Am I remembering that correctly, Rob?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. The plan's exactly the same other than the variance request.
Perfect. So
I think I have a question that is kind of fundamental. It's floor plan related. I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I want to make sure because I don't think I ever actually asked it. Is the what is it? The third floor, is that unfinished space? And maybe the homeowner.
The third floor in the home?
Yes. Will it be the new home?
Oh,
will it be unfinished space? And that might be for Mr. Rodriguez.
Maybe, yeah, maybe Mr. Rodriguez. Can you answer that? What the third floor is in the building? I think it's just attic space. I don't see a floor plan for the third floor.
Well, other than those are the dormers being represented.
Yeah, I think they're decorative, as you see on that. Go ahead, scroll back down to the lower, that plan right there. That's the proposed attic floor plan. Those are just dormers and roof lines. I think it's more decorative. I don't see any
Okay,
space up there.
Okay,
and I don't see a staircase indicated on there. It looks like a pull down.
It looks like a pull down stairway right there in the hallway.
Mhm.
perfect. Oh, yeah,
Okay.
attic ladder.
Attic
Sounds
ladder.
good.
Okay, great.
All right, let's jump in. I will just go to the letter. And so this is for the Elgin with general use, modified general use certification. So do I have a motion for variance to section 8.01 to allow the soil absorption system to be installed 4 feet above seasonal height groundwater as per Elgin's modified general use certification?
So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Aye. Do I have a motion for variance to section 10.2 to request a waiver to allow the soil absorption system to be installed approximately 30 feet from the open surface stain that's described on the plan, the runoff described therein?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. Do I have a motion for waiver to 310 CMR 15.284 with the modified general use with the DEP local upgrade approval?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I don't know if they actually need this variance. I asked
The
Mark,
last one.
yeah, because it's for the Elgin and you don't need a DEP variant, local upgrade.
Because it's already,
It's already approved. I discussed
Yeah.
it with Mark earlier today and he agreed. Mark, are you?
okay.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
guess, is there any downside on us voting it in case somebody has a question later?
Yeah, or you could vote to make sure there's a deed recording recognized in the IA technology, because there is still that.
It will be, yeah.
Yes.
Rob, do you have any concerns if we say we think this one's not required?
No, I think he's correct. We put it in as a local upgrade approval.
And the number on the letter is wrong. That's not the local upgrade number. That's
Yeah.
the Title V.
So I think it's okay, and it will be on the deed recording.
Perfect. Sounds good. So we won't vote on this one.
Right.
And then-
Rob, can you just say that you withdraw that request?
Sure, we would withdraw the DEP local upgrade.
Yeah.
Request for variance.
Perfect. Withdrawals noted. And then Mark, are the plans ready for approval subject to the IA technology deed restriction, deed recording and the garbage grinder deed recording?
That is correct. And just so the board knows, this is a two-part approval. The plan does have the well on it. The well was approved at our last meeting. So this is for the septic system approval.
Perfect. So do I have a motion to approve the plans conditional to those two deed recordings and noting the previous approval of the well?
So moved.
Second.
Hearing no further discussion.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. Perfect. Rob, have a good night.
I have, could we have one more discussion, Mr. Chairman, if we may, on this plan?
I was
So-
going to ask the same, Rob, but is this for the building application review?
Yeah, so do you want to explain it, Mark, or would you like me to?
Well, go ahead. You go ahead, Rob.
So this is obviously a renovation. So generally, you folks require that the septic system be installed prior to him being able to get his building permit to construct the house. So what he would like to do is we're in the middle of winter, we're going into spring. He'd like to start construction. I'm thinking this is anywhere from a 7 to 12-month project to finish it. And I know the concern is that, they build these things and then they just connect to the old system. We would be willing to discontinue and abandon the existing system now and take it out. So then he has no system he can connect to. And then he would be conditioned that he has to have the system in, obviously, to get a occupancy permit. He'd like to start construction prior to the system going in. And I don't have a problem, we don't have a problem putting a date on it. I know Mark had some discussions with my partner Joyce about maybe putting a date that he would start it by, say, end of March or beginning of April. My only concern with that would be that would have, if you did that, my only concern would be is March and April are very wet months. And this is a very wet site with a 2-foot water table. And ideally, if we could put this system in May, the end of May, beginning of June, when things are a lot drier, it would be a lot better for the area. Because if we start digging in there in March or April, and the water table is all the way up, it's just going to be it's going to be an erosion control problem. There's going to be a lot of mud, a lot of dewatering. It's just going to make for a very unpleasant construction site.
Well,
So that's our concern. So
yeah,
we
and
would
just
just
like-
ask the board for some help with that, if we could get something maybe to allow us to do construction and, put the system after we start construction.
Well, Rob, just so you know, I spoke to Joyce Hastings, but also to Chris Canny. I've been working with the homeowner, and unfortunately, the homeowner I misunderstood what the homeowner was trying to explain. They're here. Hi, Leonardo. I thought they were going to tear the house down, and this would be a demolition reconstruction. This is not, according to what I've heard from Chris Canny and from Joyce Hastings, this is not a demolition reconstruction. They're going to rebuild inside the house and not demolish it. So that does make a major difference. We usually will allow the building process to begin once we have the approved plan. That means the deed recordings up to rough electrical. And that would be that the system has to be constructed to get anywhere past rough electrical. So that way they could work on the interior of the house. And I like your idea of disconnecting the existing system. That could be a condition as well. But typically what we say is up to rough electrical with the construction of the system. Once the system has a construction as built, then we release the rest of the construction, finish walls and so forth. But then we won't sign off for the certificate of compliance to go into the house and live there until they have their certificate of compliance. It can be conditional to mature growth of vegetation. Hopefully that helps. But yeah, I misunderstood since it's not demolition reconstruction, it falls under different criteria.
So it sounds like, Rob, that should totally work from what you described.
Correct. I
Perfect.
agree. Yep.
Perfect. So it sounds like we're in good shape there. So we've got the plans approved, the project can kind of do what it needs to do. And we've got the next steps in terms of installation timing to accommodate the local site conditions of what makes sense.
Correct. Sounds good.
All right, perfect.
Perfect.
All right. Well, to the Rodriguez family, good luck with your project. I hope everything goes great. And Rob, thanks for your time tonight. I'm sorry that you're a little bifurcated in the chunks.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
All right, have a good night.
Night.
At least looking at my my scorecard, it looks like we're done. Does everybody else think we're done? Jeff looks like he thinks we're done.
That was unbelievable pace. That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'm only
Perfect.
paying half my cover charge.
Perfect.
Matt, if I can, I see the homeowners for 226.
Yeah, go ahead.
And they may want to say something.
Perfect.
Unmute. Okay. So are we allowed to leave now?
Yep, you're all set. We approved your plan and
Right.
the interior work can happen up to rough electrical before
All
the
right.
system needs to get installed.
Once we get those deed recordings, I can't.
I'll I'll be sending you a letter just confirming the variances granted. And I'll send you 2 documents for the deed recordings that you'll have to complete, have notarized, and bring to the registry of deeds. And when they're filed there, you bring me back a copy with the registry's
Stamp.
marginal reference. And then Mark can approve the building permit up to Rough Electrical.
And o que que você quer perguntar?
Quanto tempo vai demorar para fazer isso?
And how long will it take for us to do that?
To get the
Go ahead.
deed recordings recorded,
Yes.
Yes.
it depends. If you bring it in yourself, you'd have to bring it to Cambridge. You can do that. You can do it in a day. People have done it in just a couple days. Some people have their attorneys file it. Attorneys can do it electronically.
And so Ellen, in terms of the timeline, when could they expect to get the deed recording language from you? Is that something you could get out this week?
Either it's taking me a little longer because I'm not back to
No,
my-
no worries. I'm really
Okay.
asking what's a realistic
probably
timeline?
within a week. Before a week is up, you'll get
Perfect.
those documents.
So we'll get those to you in the next week, and then you will file those with the Registry of Deeds, and then you should be good to go to release the plans.
Okay.
All
If you
right.
have, if you have further questions, just give me a call at the office and I'll try to help. I just want to make sure the well installation's going in the right direction as well, but we can
They
go over
already,
that.
they done with the well. They already drilled the well, so now it's all they need to finish it up.
Yeah, they'll give me a call to schedule the well pump test and the well drill, and they'll submit forms. That's great to hear. Thank you.
All right, Mark. Thank you.
Have a good night and good luck with everything.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right. Do I have a motion to close the meeting?
Nobody
So
wants to.
I was gonna say, we're just having so much fun. I hear so moved. Do I hear a second?
Second,
Guys,
And hearing no further discussion.
Daryl, I.
Matt Beaver's eye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye. Have a great night, guys.
Thank
Night.
you. Bye.
Right.